Hello and welcome to Paper Tuesdays with Michael Dwyer and Marc Halpin. Michael, who is our guest today?
This is great. It's like an inception moment for someone that has loved kombucha since he introduced it to me in Bridgewater Shopping Centre. We now have an expert in gut health and an expert in all things culinary. It's Theresa Keane, all the way from Kilmuckridge. Theresa, thanks for joining us.
No bother. How are you?
You're Kilmuckridge, but you're not Wexford and everything that comes in between that with flavours and that. But Boochandbia is your brand. Tell us about it, Theresa.
Yep. So Boochandbia, as you said, is the brand. Booch being just the short for kombucha. It's just we call it Booch, and so we've actually ended up calling our van the Booch.
The Booch.
Or, that's what we call our pet name for it. So yeah, so we make kombucha. We make water kefir, milk kefir, lots of different types of fermented foods and fermented drinks. So that's our take on things. That's what we do.
Very good. So fermented, is that just letting stuff get old, or is there a process?
Yeah, well look, it is base form, that's what it is. You let stuff, but it's more controlled.
Right.
So say for the kombucha, so the one I gave you there is a blackberry. So it's actually a hedgerow. So wild, all the berries that are out at the moment, or out a couple of weeks ago, they're all kind of gone now.
So what sort of berries are out at the moment?
So you have rose hips. You'd still have a few blackberries. There might be some, depending on the area that you're in, there could be some sea buckthorn berries. There's lots of different little things that you can use. So that's what that one was. So what you basically do is you make tea. So any tea, as long as it's proper tea, that it has sinensis, is what the Camellia sinensis. So proper tea, as opposed to, some of the teas that you can get that are like peppermint, but they have no caffeine, no tea in it.
Yeah.
So you get that tea, you sweeten it, lots of sugar, and then you put what we call a Scoby on top of it. So the Scoby looks like a rubber mat. It's often called a mushroom, a kombucha mushroom. And
rubber mat is very kind to a Theresa.
Yeah, I know. But some of them,
his Scobies used to grow
beauty
legs.
is in the eye of the beholder. I absolutely love. So in my house and in the kitchen that I hire to make all these foods, I have loads of jars of what my daughter calls brains, But they look, and yes, some of them are really smooth and thin, and others are fat and ugly and knobbly and all sorts. But either way, Scoby stands for symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast.
Oh, wow.
So that's what a Scoby stands for. And that's exactly what it is. So it's a pellicle, what they call a pellicle. So, and that contains lots of different types of bacteria and yeasts. And when you put that onto the cold sweetened tea, it starts to ferment it. And the magic happens. So there's a kind of a two-step process. So the first step is aerobic. So it needs oxygen. So you just basically make it, and you have to be very careful that everything is really clean, really sterilised, because you don't want any bad bacteria getting in there. You only want the controlled ones, the ones that you want in there. So you just cover it over a cloth and you leave it for between, say, 7 and 10 days. At a temperature, now, if you're just doing this for yourself at home, people are not quite as particular. But I would keep it between 19 and 24. I take the pH level of it. Before, and I take it after 2 days, and then I take it after a week until I get the pH that I want.
Wow.
And I control the temperature and the temperature as well. So when it gets to, it's normally about 10 days, that kind of thing. And then I'll come along, I'll take the Scoby out, store it in my Scoby hotel. That's what they're called, Scoby hotels. And with about 200 mils of that first liquid, of the first fermented liquid, and you store that, and you then go ahead and add your flavour. So for this one, say in particular, it was a puree of all those berries, and you can add, like, there's no end to the flavour profiles that you can add to kombucha, but the flavours have to be complementary to each other as well. You don't want to just fire something in there for the sake of it. You have to kind of know a little bit about flavour science and what works and what doesn't work. But generally speaking, if everything grows together, they'll go together.
Yeah.
Flavour wise. And then this is where the second phase of it is where you get the fizz. So you were asking earlier about the fizz. How do you get the fizz? How do you get it? And then no, I don't put a saltpeter into it. Michael, and this is where the sealing comes in. So you seal it then, and this is an anaerobic stage, and that takes roughly anywhere from 2 days to 4 or 5 days. Again, temperature controlled. This one, if I put that into the fridge, it'll stop fizzing. So if I want a cold drink, the bacteria, because bacteria at a low temperature obviously are not as active. That's why we keep things in the fridge.
Yeah.
Obviously to stop the bacteria working and breaking down the foods. So there'll be no fizz in that. But once I leave it at a nice room temperature, warm temperature, it produces carbon dioxide, and that gives it the fizz. And that's what gives you that lovely, fizzy, refreshing, gut healthy drink.
Sorry, Michael, can I just ask you about the aerobic and anaerobic? Because in terms of like training and people and stuff, anaerobic would be working on oxygen, as you were saying before, and then is that?
So anaerobic means it works without the presence of oxygen, and then aerobic is with oxygen.
Does that mean it's working on the glucose from the sugar the Scoby is living off of that?
Yeah. So even if I didn't have a Scoby, so it's not actually the Scoby. It's you always do a backwash, backslopping.
Right.
So along with the Scoby, you need a little bit of a previous batch. Or if you're only starting off for the first time, you could use a little bit of cider vinegar.
Right.
So it's the blend of bacteria that's there. So whether it's lactic acid bacteria and acetic acid bacteria, that's kind of. Now I'm not a scientist, so I can't.
Yeah.
I can't go into the whole glycolic breakdown and all of those types of things, but. Unless I had something in front of me to be really looking at. But basically, it breaks down the sugars. And
That's
the
really interesting.
The yeast break down the sugars. The bacteria then comes along and starts working on the acetic acid bacteria. Yeah. And that's what gives it that sour, vinegary taste. So if that's left, it'll go to vinegar.
Yeah.
So if I don't do anything with that, there's anything left, it'll go to vinegar, which is exactly what I do with it. So I don't waste any of that.
Really?
So if there's lots, like I sell vinegars as well. So if there's that much left in the bottle, I'll keep throwing them into an aerobic situation, and I'll just keep putting them into it. I'll add things like carrot peelings. I could particularly apple peelings, apple cores. Take the pips out, all right, but the apple cores. And after roughly 3 months, I'll have the most beautiful, fruity, floral vinegar. Oh. And I use that then in cooking in all sorts of things.
Wow.
It's a great, it's a thing, people pay a lot of money for cider apple vinegar, you know, and they make great play about having this, the mother. You know, you've heard this, but like you get that. That's exactly what you get from that.
Yeah. I used to do a shot of the mother in the mornings, and it was horrendous.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not good
for the
mouth.
I don't know about the science behind that. I'm not really sure because vinegars really only have acetic acid. They don't really have anything else because the pH is so low that there's not much else can survive there.
Yeah.
So the science is not really there to say whether that's good for you or not.
Yeah.
But for me, I add it a lot to food. Because again, it might stop you by using lemons and limes, even though I love citrus. But this will give you the same flavour profile. It'll finish off a sauce. It'll finish off a dish. It'll just give that acid that you need in nearly all food. In a good dish, you need to have all those elements, and acid is really, really important in food. So that gives you the same thing. Only you can get a different floral, fruity note from it.
Yeah, you're big into your flavours as well. You even
Massive.
had a coffee kombucha once.
Oh, the coffee kombucha is my favourite.
Really?
Yeah, so what I did was I cultured a Scoby. So instead of making the tea, I made a really good, strong, good coffee. The coffee that we sell from Booch as well. I made made it really strong, and I put the Scoby into it, a new Scoby. So every time you make a batch of kombucha, the Scoby grows a new Scoby. So each time, so that's why sometimes you'll see them, they're that thick and there are layers and layers and layers of Scobies. That's what they are. So I peeled off a new Scoby, a baby Scoby, and I fermented it with coffee. And then I left it for a week, and then I took the new Scoby off that and I did it again. And I didn't use that liquid, I didn't use that coffee. That time I just threw that out because there was no real taste of anything. So after doing that, I think I did that maybe 3 times, and I ended up with what I call a proper coffee Scoby. And I absolutely love that coffee. Did you try it?
We had it here.
Yeah.
We had it here.
Did you like it? Or?
I liked it. Yeah.
Yeah. I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
I think it's really good. Yeah. To me, it's like is it those nitro coffees though? That kind of thing that's going on, and I just really love it. I think it's gorgeous. And you get I've there's pictures on my Instagram of a couple of weeks ago when I made one, and when I poured it out, it was like a Guinness. The head was that thick on it.
Yeah.
Oh, it was just, it's really lovely. And it's brilliant to use in food because it gives a bitterness instead of just the sour that kombucha can give, that sour acid. But the coffee kombucha gives another layer that's really missing from a flavour point of view, that's missing in a lot of our foods because we've become used to such sweet food that we're missing this bitter element. So that coffee kombucha gives me bitterness and a sourness. So I really, really love it.
So when you're thinking of flavours, you're thinking of what you can bring to your stall in terms of flavour, not just of what product, lemon, ginger, in terms of...
Oh, it's all about flavour for me. All about flavour. Sorry, now you're a bit like Ant and Dec to me. I don't know which is which.
I'm Mark. I'm Mark. He's Michael.
I'm really sorry. So, yeah, so for me, everything, it's a flavour first approach to food. And it's to, like, I hate using the word healthy food because I just don't like the term, because healthy food, what does it mean? Like all food is nutritive, all food feeds your body. Whether it feeds it in a good way or a bad way is another thing, but it does all give you fuel and it keeps your body going. So I like to think of it as, if you have a flavour first approach to food, like it doesn't matter how good something, like how healthy something is, if it doesn't taste good, you're not going to eat it.
Yep.
Does it? Like really, if somebody says to you, oh, that's really good for you, and you're like, yeah, but it tastes like cardboard.
Yeah.
Or, you're not going to eat it then. So I look at it very much from flavour first. So I look at something and I say, okay, I'm very plant-centric, but I do meat, but I'm kind of careful about where the meat comes from. And, well, I'm as careful as I can be. It's very hard to navigate that whole thing as well. But anyway, very plant-centric. So, and I just look, okay, I'm going to have, say I have a curry, a massaman curry. Okay, so, and I'm using lots of, say, potatoes and squash or whatever's in season, whatever kind of vegetables are in season. So I go, okay, so the squash is quite sweet. Butternut squash is quite sweet. So I'm going to need something that has acid in it. But if I start off with the acid, if I start cooking it in acid, it's going to lose that acid. So I think of all the time, I think of the 5 tastes, you know, the sweet, sour, salty, bitter, umami, and I try to get all of that into the dish. And so I know that, say, peanuts are going to give me umami. They're also going to give me a fat. And then something else, some seeds will give me crunch. So I have texture, and now I have got health benefits. I've got texture, I've got flavour. And then trying to put them all together so that the flavours are not muddied. It still tastes like it's supposed to taste. So I have a curry now. How am I going to finish that? What am I going to serve it with? I want something maybe rich, like a yoghurt or something to cut through heat. So instead of just doing yoghurt, I'll make what's called a labna. So a labna is like a strained yoghurt where all the whey is taken out if you leave it to strain. And now that labna is like a sponge for flavour then. So you can add grated zest to it. You can add chili oils, whatever you like, that labna will soak it up. So when you go to eat that curry, you've got the smoothness of the labna with, say, a hit of chili. Then you're going into the sort of earthy flavours of the butternut squash and the peanuts and all of that. And then I want something a little bit bland to break all of that up. So that might be my couscous or basmati rice or whatever it is. Whatever. Generally, it's a whole grain wheat or something like that. So that's how I approach every single dish or every bread, everything I make.
Theresa, you have a skill in delivery. You know, I've watched so many Donald Skehan and Ready Steady Cook and whatever, and I tell you, Ainsley Harriet, eat your heart out. That's unbelievable. I just love how you approach it. Like, I bet you cooking never gets tired then with that approach. Oh,
Jesus, I just love it. I absolutely love food. I love cooking. I didn't cook this. We were talking a little bit earlier about, I was doing the market every second week now, and I actually felt like there was something wrong all weekend. I couldn't, so I ended up making bread last night at about 9:30. I literally did, yeah, because I had to do something. I have to cook. And like, I really, really like cooking for people, and that's why I love the market.
Yeah.
The market is it's different to a restaurant. In a restaurant, a lot of the times the chef is behind. You know, they're hidden. And I know there are restaurants where it's an open kitchen, but it's not really an open kitchen. But the market is very open. So you're there and people are hugely curious. I love that. I love when somebody, you know, says they're looking, say, the sauerkraut or the kimchi or whatever those fermented foods are, or whatever your dish is. And they start to talk to you and they ask you about it. And I tell them like the flavours, and I'll tell them then the benefits to the body. So like it doesn't have to be all about it's really healthy, it's really good for your gut. It will make you feel good. So our motto on the van is it's called Boochandbia, and it's good food, good mood, because it's been very well researched and very well proven that if you're getting the right food into you, your mood will improve. And we all know that like if anybody suffers from depression or is in any way down or traumatized, you have to eat good food, get exercise.
Yeah.
You know, and that's because that's what your gut wants. That's what your bacteria in your gut want. They want to be fed well. But anyway, on the curiosity point, customers will ask the questions they ask. I love it. I love talking to them then, and I talk to them about flavour. I won't get all sciencey on them or all chefy, because they don't give a shite whether I sorry. They don't care. I have a chef's mouth, by the way. But they want to know what it tastes like, and they also want to know, could they possibly replicate that in some way? That's what they want to know, you know. And will this actually be good for me? Like, but don't tell me too much about how good it is for me. Tell me how I'm going to enjoy it. And that's what I really, really love about the market. And as well as that, I can say to them, you see those carrots, those heirloom carrots, I got those off Tom down the road, or I got that meat from Paddy, or, you know, wherever it is. I got the veg from James, who sells it right there. You know, that is, to me, that's magic.
You actually do get the buffalo from Mackmore.
From Mackmore, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, you had Liam on here, I think, didn't you?
did.
Yeah.
We had a right crack with him.
The buffalo sausage, that was only something new. But I decided to do the buffalo sausage for a couple of reasons. A, I know Liam. I hadn't tried them myself. B, I know the butcher, that he gets Noel. I worked for Noel for a long time. So I know that Liam rears those animals well. I know that Noel butchers them well, kills them kindly, as you know, as well as they can. You're killing them at the end of the day. But I know that I can kind of trace it back as much as possible. So I'm very confident and comfortable then talking about those. You know, and it's a good product. It's high protein, low fat, you know, all of those kind of things. So it went very well, and it's lovely with kimchi.
I may give it a go. What I used to do is just get a spoon of kimchi and eat it by itself, just to force myself to get it in. But I wouldn't be as variety driven in my food as you. Like, I'd eat the same thing every day, and it'd be
that's a really
enough,
good point, because the variety is a huge thing. Getting that diversity of foods, because we're always talking about, like, we hear it all the time that our bacteria, our microbiome needs diversity, because we're growing a lot of the same crops all the time, so that's what people are getting to eat. And I bet you do it yourself. I bet you, without thinking, you'd probably eat the same thing every Monday or every Tuesday. You know, we do it. It's bacon and cabbage day, or it's, you know, curry day. So we do that, and it's the same ingredients that go in all the time. So we're not getting diversity of product, of food, and our gut bacteria thrives on that. That's what they want. They want us to get different things. So that's why when I'm doing, say, I just took the massaman curry as an example, because it's a type of dish that you can throw a lot into. So I will think about all the different types of fibre that you need. You know, your soluble, your insoluble, resistant starch, all of those things. I'll think about all of those things that I can get in there that I know that your gut bacteria will absolutely love. And in turn, that will make you feel happy.
And when did it first click with you that gut health was important?
I suppose the first time, I was down in UCC. I was doing a food science and technology degree down in UCC back in, I think it was 2015, around then. And the microbiome study place, I can't think of the name of it now, but that's where they study it. So there's a scientist, John Cryan, and a psychiatrist, Ted Dinan, down there, and they wrote the book called The Psychobiotic Revolution. Have you heard of that?
I seen that. I was researching stuff earlier, and that was one of the first things that came up.
It is amazing. It's the most amazing book. So it's called The Psychobiotic Revolution, and it talks about the role of the microbiome for your mood and the effect it has on depression and things like that. So that's what they talk about. So it was written by Scott Anderson, and then these two guys, John Cryan and Ted Dinan, they're the science behind it. And they're world leaders, and UCC is a world leader in this research. So I was down there twice a week So I was looking at it, and then I had to do a research project, and I was doing it on something. I can't even remember what it was, but this kept coming up. And of course, because it was in Cork, but because it was in UCC, it was always talked about. Other lecturers were talking about the work that was being done there. Yeah. So that was kind of the start. It kind of got me interested, and then I did a master's in applied culinary nutrition. And while I was doing that master's, then I decided to kind of concentrate on that. That was the kind of thing that I really just got really involved in, and I started making kombuchas and doing all sorts of experiments in my kitchen. Not everything worked out, but so that's really where it all kicked off from.
Yeah, even subjectively, like I notice a difference from taking probiotics or taking kombucha, or say if you go out and you eat like drinking pints or getting a takeaway, then after, like, you feel like shit, you feel depressed for 2 or 3 days, even a week after, like,
yeah, you do.
And there's definitely a connection between your gut brain and your head brain.
Absolutely, because you've wiped out, what's in your gut can be transient. So they say that your the main kind of microbiome, well, you can have a microbiome anywhere. We just talk like a microbiome is a place. So it could be the microbiome of my skin or the microbiome of my underarm, whatever it is. But we talk about the gut microbiome. So they say that the makeup of it is generally kind of in place by the time you're 2, and it can be hugely influenced by how you're born. So whether you're born naturally or whether you're born by a cesarean section. So if you're born naturally, you're going to have all the mother's all that flora and fauna is going to be naturally there. That's the first hit that a baby will get. But if you're born by a C-section, which unfortunately, that happens, and that can't be helped. But the very first, it's a sterile environment. So your first contact with a microbiome of sorts is going to be whatever's there on the surgeon's hands or in the environment there. So you've already got less than you would have normally. And then, are you breastfed or not breastfed? Again, you're going to get different varieties. So all those things come into play, and then depending on what you're fed when you're very young. And so they say by the time you're 2, you're it's almost set, but that doesn't mean you can't change it. But it does mean that if you don't get a variety of foods and you don't get that sort of diversity of if you're not out playing in the dirt, if you're not doing all of those things that that were considered normal, much more normal than they are now. We're all too clean. Lads, you're way too clean.
I don't know about myself now. I've been told otherwise.
But we are all kind of just too clean. And of course COVID didn't help all of that, did it? And
no,
we
it's made it worse.
Sterilizers, we use antibacterial things in everything. Like every single thing that you can think of almost has antibacterial properties. And that's why the whole problem with antimicrobial resistance is out there as well. The bacteria are becoming resistant to the drugs that it's a huge big, it's a massive area. You could go from one area to another very quickly. But either way, it's transient. So the more types of fermented foods and lactic acid bacteria and things like that you can get into you, the better chance you have of keeping that colony going. So that's my understanding of how it works. As I said, I'm not a scientist, but that's,
Well, you're not a scientist. But thankfully, Marc is. Marc has a science course this afternoon on Google, and I think a few good ones, Marc.
So this actually is kind of just what you were talking about the body and the bacterial cells. So there are at least as many bacterial cells in the gut microbiome as there are human cells in your entire body.
Yeah, at least.
Which is mental. So there's more bacteria in our gut than there are human cells in all of us.
Yeah, so if you think, and that's just your gut.
Yeah.
So that's just one area, and that has more than your cells.
The number is suggested to be close to 10 trillion. And that's not even counting the bacteria that live on our skin and elsewhere.
Exactly.
That's crazy. And Michael and myself Michael sent me a video about this sort of fertility crisis that's going on in men at the minute, and it's related to phthalates and like stuff like what's in your shampoo and your deodorant and things like that is ruining those biomes, and it's getting into your system and it's affecting men's health in particular. I was talking about, I assume it's not good for anyone really.
No, I don't know an awful lot about that. I just know that we are wiping out, either directly or indirectly, we're wiping out a lot of the sources of where we get good bacteria.
Yeah.
You know, bacteria gets a bad name, but obviously if we're made up of all of that, and there's like bacteria live everywhere. You know, they live on inanimate objects. They don't need something living to live on. So they're everywhere. So they're obviously not all bad. We desperately need them to survive. Like, we only think we're important. Bacteria and microorganisms are important. They were there long before us, and they'll survive.
When we die, they'll go back into the ground.
Yeah, that's, you know, they are life. So for me, there's a lot of talk about that with men as well, and there is also, is that related, I wonder, to a high protein diet for men as well? Isn't there a lot of talk about that being related, that men in particular, say if they're trying to build up muscle, that they're using a lot of these whey powders or muscle building all protein.
Yeah.
And so high protein diets, I think you'll find, have been linked to poor sperm count as well.
Have they?
Now again, like, that's a very broad thing to say, because it could be a particular types of protein, so you need to go and research it a bit more. But I do believe it can be reversed, which is a good thing. So if you go on a more balanced, the lovely word balanced diet, balance to me and balance to somebody else could be completely different things. But yeah, so I know that it definitely is linked to it. But it can be reversed if you go back onto. Yeah,
and similarly with the phthalates, what I found interesting with that video, I think it's on After School on YouTube, is that once within 3 or 4 hours it's passed, or they pass. So the body's ability to resist or to reform itself is there inherently.
Yeah. Body's great.
Yeah,
look after it.
It is. I actually was given out to by my doctor for a high protein diet. Really? I was recently, so in the past 6 months I've had 2 stomach ulcers, and they're probably now, I wasn't sleeping great, I was probably only sleeping 4 or 5 hours a night over this period, and I got them twice, and she said it's probably due to a high protein diet. So I reduced my protein, and now the stomach ulcer came back, and medication has helped, but I don't know, maybe that is the cause of it as well. Maybe we shouldn't be eating as much protein as we are.
There wasn't no vaccine thrown in there.
They reckon it was underlying in my immune system. The vaccine brought it on, and that's what made it worse.
Right, yeah.
So it's probably just as well I got the vaccine. But
lots of different, I've had also problems as well, but I used to smoke. I don't smoke anymore. I don't smoke, don't drink. Too much information. But I'm like, my halo's there somewhere. But, there's lots of different causes. There's a particular type of bacteria that can cause ulcers as well. I can't think of the name of it now offhand, but there is one that they often test for, and that can present itself as a cough. Do you ever see somebody sometimes and they just as if something is stuck in their throat?
Yeah.
And that's what it was for me. I was wondering, I was like, God Almighty, what is that? And it turned out it was from an ulcer. And one of the first things then they test for is this particular strain of bacteria, which I just cannot remember the name of.
I can tell you the name of it right now.
What is it?
1 second now. Oh no, it's gone. I saw it was on a different page, yeah. But it did have it here earlier, I can't remember it. But apparently stomach ulcers can also be brought on by anti-inflammatory drugs.
Oh yeah, by all the NSAIDs.
Which I started taking for the pain in my stomach. So I made it way worse.
Yeah.
Which wasn't good, but...
the milk kefir is really good for that. So we were talking about the kombucha, but milk kefir, so cultured milk, is really good for your stomach, for any kind of stomach or gut problems. Kind of seals it thickens the mucus on our cells, which stops like these things like leaky gut, and which helps to prevent those. So it keeps those barriers on the cells.
There's great variety in that market now as well. Like when you think of kefir yogurts, and in all the mainstream supermarkets have at least 3 or 4 options in here.
Yeah. That little market, in fairness, like the Gorey Farmers Market is a great little market. There's lots of different stalls down there, like, and we sell all this type of stuff, but you can also get, like, I mean, Adele makes all the jams and things like that, but she'll make elderberry flower drinks, cordials, and she uses the hedgerows as well in winter, and or in autumn, and she'll make all of those types of things as well. So it's all there, like.
And what goes into when you make your kefir? You make kefir milk, is it? Or
I make milk kefir and water kefir. Yeah.
Water kefir. Right.
Yeah. So they're called kefir grains they're not grains. They're the same as a Scoby. They're symbiotic cultures of bacteria and yeast, but they just look like, I should have brought you some, but they just look like little tiny translucent, well, the water kefir grains look translucent, look like little clear grains. And the milk kefir are the same, only the milk kefir tend to clump together, and they're white, obviously, from the milk. And so the water kefir grows really, really quickly. You feed that sugar and water, it'll eat all the sugar, it becomes fizzy, and you can add flavours to it. It happens much quicker than kombucha. It happens in 3 or 4 days.
Oh,
yeah,
like it's
really
easier
quick
to make
one.
then.
It's easier to make, but it's much harder to handle because they will multiply at a rapid rate. You'll start off with like, I don't know, maybe 10 grams of water kefir grains, and after 4 or 5 batches you'll have 20 grams, and then you'll have 200 grams very quickly, and you will not be able to give them away. You know,
Yeah.
but you can feed them to your dog. Great, yeah, dogs love them. Our dogs love milk. They love the milk kefir, and they like a little bit of Scoby,
All
a
right.
little bit of the kombucha Scoby. Yeah. You can do all sorts of things with Scobies. There's huge science out there on what they're doing with Scobies. They're making like edible packaging from them. Yeah, you can candy them. There is, I can't even think of the amount of stuff, but if you even if you wanted to do like a quick Google on uses for Scobies, it's unbelievable. It's a very strong thing. It's a pellicle. It's a very strong material. And so they grow it. Do you know what you do sometime? Look up Noma, you know, the famous restaurant in Copenhagen. So Noma has won, I think it's their 4th or 5th time winning restaurant, the best restaurant in the world. And there's a couple of videos on Instagram where Noma grow the Scoby in a flat, shallow tray. And they grow it for the Scoby, not for making kombucha. And what they can do with that Scoby it's unreal. It's just unreal.
And what would they use the Scoby for then?
Well, they use it for all things. So they'll put different flavours through it, and they'll make it either very thin or very thick. They use it like, they make a really, really fine one. It's almost see-through that they've kind of caramelised, and they put that over ice cream.
Oh.
I can't even tell you half the stuff that they do with it, but you need to look up. Like it's amazing. Yeah, the kombucha or the Scoby itself has lots of different uses.
Yeah. We've dived deep on the pleasant side. Mark, can we go into the dirty, gritty side?
This is what I was looking forward to all
The
evening. Yeah, I couldn't sleep last night, wanted to ask about this.
Jason, now don't ask me that too sciencey there now, Mark.
So, ancient medicine involved fecal transplants. So, the concept of engineering a healthy gut microbiome has long lived in human medicine. The first record of a gut microbiome transplantation dates back to the 4th century, wherein golden syrup, also known as yellow soup, was used as a cure for food poisoning and diarrhea. The soup, developed and prescribed in China, used fecal matter as a primary ingredient. They didn't know the specifics of how it worked. The developers understood that diarrhea and food poisoning could signal an imbalance within the body, and that this soup may help to restore it. We know now that fecal transplants can cause a shift in the microbiome, and when done right, result in a healthier microbiome. Don't worry, we won't share the recipe.
Lovely. Yeah, so fecal transplants, or if you're in America, you can buy a poo pill, basically.
Right.
Yeah, which I wouldn't recommend.
Yeah.
Because you really don't know where it's come from.
Things they take in
The
nightclub
idea
these
of a fecal transplant it's actually being done at the moment in hospitals, and
Really?
mostly for people who there's a pathogen called what's it called now? C. diff, Clostridium difficile, and it affects elderly people in particular. And so it's just called C. diff, but it causes severe diarrhea. But it's severe diarrhea, as you know, in a small child or an unwell person or an older person, can have very bad effects, and you can die. But what they found is that if you transplant, what has genuinely worked in really bad cases, is a fecal transplant. So basically, you have to find a good donor, though. You have to know that the shit you're going to put in there is good shit.
Good shit.
But you do. There's no point in getting like your shit. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Unless you have to show that it's good stuff, and that it contains the right balance of bacteria, and that it's a good healthy, comes from a good healthy microbiome, a good healthy gut. And if that's transplanted, Literally, as it says, it has had amazing effects. It has also had, there was a case of somebody dying in America fairly recently. So I think it happened actually during a trial. They were trialing out different methods. So I think somebody did die, but they can't actually say that they died from that. I haven't gone back to look at that to find out exactly what happened. But
So if I was to eat all your food and get a really healthy gut bacteria, could I set up a stall and sell pills of my poo at the Gory's Farmers
you can
Market?
do what you like, but don't sit up beside me.
You need a mask.
Yeah. What would you call it?
Oh, jeez, I don't know. I'd have to get back to
Mark's
you.
mix.
Poo Tuesdays, maybe. Just to get back to the mental side, Theresa, so this other part here says your gut instincts may be more than just a phrase. Mounting evidence suggests that a person's mood, diet and behaviour and tendency towards diseases such as Alzheimer's disease may be influenced by their gut microbiome. Findings like these prompted some scientists to refer to the gut microbiome and its relationship with the enteric nervous system, the network of nerves found in your stomach, as a second brain. Because most of this evidence comes from studies done with mice, it's still too early to say definitively how to or what extent bacteria affect human behaviours, but the evidence so far suggests that your gut instincts may be more than just a phrase.
Yeah, I would say that the research into the microbiome is it's massive, and every second scientist seems to be doing some sort of research into either prebiotics, what do you call them? Probiotics, or now postbiotics is another one.
Right.
And but the gut-brain axis is a real thing. So your gut talks to your brain.
Yeah.
And it talks to it through pathways that are driven by particular bacteria and some of the byproducts of those bacteria. So that literally can say whether it sends a positive or a negative message to your brain, or no message at all. So that's the way it is quite a complicated thing, and I wouldn't even pretend to understand all the different pathways of it, because it is quite complicated. But the Psychobiotic Revolution, the book that I was speaking, that's exactly what that's about.
Yeah.
That's exactly what that book talks about, and they put it beautifully in it, because even though it's done by, most of the book is written by scientists, they're very good at putting their message across. So they're very good at how they communicate that language. So it's really easy to read. Because I wouldn't have read anything too sciencey. Like, who will? Unless you're a scientist, you're not going to read something like that. Yeah. But I couldn't recommend that book highly enough, especially if you want to understand a little bit about depression and anxiety and the role diet plays in that.
Yeah.
And Ted Dinan, as I said, he's a professor of psychiatry. So for him to get involved in to really understand how the impact food can make on your mood is massive. Because a lot of psychiatry was based around pills, tablets. Take a tablet for this, take a tablet for that, and it was very really short term based. So, and I understand that like to break cycle, obviously something has to be, the thing has to be cut and you have to move on from there. But he's collaborated also with Paula Mee, who's a dietitian, and they have a Good Food, Good Mood cook. She has a really good, nice little recipe book out as well, cookbook out. For that kind of thing. But definitely the gut-brain axis is a thing. It's definitely real, yeah. I think, I'm not a scientist, obviously, but I read before that you have more serotonin receptors in your stomach than you do in your brain. That's right, yeah. Yeah, one can't work without the other. What happens in your brain can't work without signals being sent from your gut. It's how kind of I understand it. I didn't think we were going to talk so much about that. I would have brushed up a little bit on my. Oh well, we didn't either. It's just a passion. But like, it's really interesting stuff, though, isn't it? It really is. Yeah, I'm really curious. What's the feedback? Like, I know, like on the taste, but like, do you ever get people come back and say, "Do you know what? I felt really good after taking that." Yeah, I do. I get a lot of it. I also get a lot of people who tell me all of their bowel problems. Yeah, lovely. Okay. I can tell you now. I know more about Dory's bowels than the sorry. They do, because you know what? People like to talk about their I can't believe you wake up on a Saturday morning and say, right, tell me, what was it like this week? They start off with like the kind of look around and see if anybody else does. No. Okay. But they want to know that they want to know how to take it. And what I try to do is not medicinalize food, which I think can happen really quickly if all you talk about is the health benefits of something. So even though I'd say to them, look, if you're not used to, particularly if you're not used to fermented foods, you can't just go and drink a half a litre of that stuff, because you think you had bowel problems before. You will need to stock up on the toilet roll if you just dive in there. It's that you can't do that. Your gut is not used to that. So you have to take off. So I give them a little tiny espresso cup.
Oh yeah, that's your
I
shot.
give them that, yeah, their shot, and I said, just take that in the morning. Just take that in the morning and have maybe a little bit extra fibre. So we sell this thing called Dukkha as well, which is a spice blend. So it's a spice and nuts, and it's a blend, and it just looks like a jar of seeds and nuts. But it's actually very crafted deliberately for flavour and fibre content. And it's something that I call a fibre crumble. So you can put it on top of your carrots, your spuds, your whatever you're eating. So particularly if you're not good at having any fermented foods, or if you're not good at eating a wide range of food products, this fibre crumble will give you a good hit of fibre. It'll give you a good, it depends on how you use it, and obviously the detail is in the dose. But if you take kind of a tablespoon of that, you're going to get roughly 10 grams of fibre, roughly, depending on the blend. And we need 30 grams of fibre a day, which is very hard for Irish people. Do not get 30 grams of fibre a day. They just don't in the main. So if you're getting a shot of kombucha, a bit of Dukkha, and say if you're having a spud, and don't peel it, leave the feckin' peels on. Don't be peeling the...
Preach it.
You know?
I think so.
And eat that peel. And, things like that. Then you are really on your way. Your gut will thank you so much for that. And you'll feel better. You really will have a little bit of a walk or a swim or whatever and on top of it. And you really will start to feel better. And after it takes about 2 to 3 weeks, really, so that's why I'd say to people, don't give up. If you do feel a little need to use the toilet a little bit more than normal, the first few days, don't give up on that. Just don't say, oh, that made me go to the toilet. Keep at it 10 to 14 days, and you'll really reap the benefits from it.
And what do you make of the capsules, the Super 8s and Udo's Choice and stuff like that?
Are they like probiotics?
Yeah, the probiotic pills.
Yeah. I think if you're a person that can't take your nutrients or anything that you need for your health in food form, fine. But I do think that there is a whole generation out there that think, old and young, just it's a whole lot of people who think that everything can be solved with a pill, even a poo pill. But so I think probiotics are the same kind of thing. If you're going to buy a pill with probiotics in it, you want to know exactly what bacteria and yeast you're looking for. What are you actually looking for? And do you know that? Do you know what probiotics you need? Because there's, and are you going to get one that has 7 strains of lactic acid bacteria? Are you going to get one that has 3 strains? You're going to get, so say you buy milk kefir from the shop, or kombucha from a lot of the shops. A lot of it is pasteurised, and then they might add back in something. So you're getting maybe 3 or 4 strains of bacteria. But you have something that's an artisan product like ours, and you that's not fermented, or that's not pasteurised, I beg your pardon, that's not pasteurised. I think there could be 15, 16 different strains of bacteria and yeast. So do you see where I'm coming from? It's not just one thing. It's like taking a vitamin pill and all you're getting is vitamin A or vitamin C, and whatever it is. The vitamin C needs iron, or everything needs something else to work. Nothing works on its own in your body. And it's the same with our biodiversity out there in things we're growing. If we keep growing monocultures, the bees are going to suffer. Other plants and other wildlife, everything's going to suffer if nothing works in life on its own. And it's the same with food. It's the very same. That's the way I look on it.
Wow.
Yeah.
So no to the... Unless you can't get it any other way. People have all sorts of issues with the texture of food. Texture of food is a big thing for people. They can't swallow food that's what they describe as slimy or too crunchy or whatever it is. They have a real big problem with it. Like they literally cannot swallow it. So if you can't get those types of foods into you for any whatever reason it is, well then, take a good multivitamin or take a good probiotic. But make sure it's a good one.
Yeah. Yeah, because vitamins are just sold, aren't they, as the cure?
Oh, that just drives me nuts.
Yeah, take this
You should be able
for
to
this.
get everything from your food. You really should.
Yeah.
You know, now, maybe that's easy for a chef to say, because maybe I know how to, I hope I know how to prepare it anyway. So, like, then do we look at education? You know, should people be, should we be able to give people education that they can understand? I think, like, there's enough cookery classes out there, and there's enough, my God, people have never been more interested in food. But are they just interested in watching that mad TikTok, or that, you know, the famous chefs, that food that's Instagrammable? Is that what they're interested in? Do they really want to make it themselves? Because I have a daughter that certainly doesn't. You know, she didn't have to roast a chicken. I'm ashamed of myself. Imagine. She'll kill me now.
Let's focus on you, Theresa, to avoid any family disputes.
Yeah.
Like, you certainly have found your, what's the Japanese have it, ikaigi or... Ikigai.
Yeah, we'll take it.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. You found, like, you have your health and safety with the culinary during Monday to Friday, but you have this market and it's a pure passion of yours.
I absolutely love it, yeah. I do. I've had restaurants over the years, and I've liked them, you know, and I've given everything to them, lost my arse on them, still gone back for more.
Yeah.
But I've never had, this is different, and this type of food, I don't do like the fermented foods and the kombuchas. I don't do them for the wackiness or the novel factor. I don't do them for that. I do it because I absolutely believe in it. I believe in the science. It all makes sense to me. Now, this type of food just makes sense to me. And it's all things that we've lost. Like in Ireland, we had a history of fermented foods. You know, we had a history of keeping foods, fermenting them in honey, like garlic in honey, or other things being fermented in honey.
What other examples have you got?
Well, buttermilk is the best. You know, buttermilk was always a drink that people had. You didn't drink, you just didn't drink glasses of milk. You had buttermilk. That's what you used to cook with, to make breads with, and that's what you drank. Everybody drank buttermilk. There's lots of different. Sometimes we mightn't have known that we were fermenting them, because we would have been just looking for a flavour of some sort to make something with, you know. But other cultures do have a huge culture, you know, other countries rather, like China and Japan, they have a huge culture of fermentation, huge. And fish in warmer countries. Warmer countries tended, I suppose, to have a better or a more diverse culture of it because of their heat, because they needed some way to preserve food. And sure, that's what fermentation does. It's a preservation method. So they would have had a bigger, wider culture of it than we do. But we still fermented our milk. That's what it was. And sure, cheese is a fermented product. So we had lots of fermented cheeses, lots of sour cheeses that had that tang and that natural mould or whatever it was around them.
Yeah.
You definitely pasteurize it all now.
I'd say you definitely find a flow and get into a zone in the kitchen. Especially you describe your food, I think, with a great respect and admiration. Like, and you even mentioned that when you say that bacteria are greater than us. Like.
Yeah. And I think that's a really good way to talk about it. Food deserves respect. Every bit of food deserves respect. And I'm currently doing a degree in botanical cuisine. Okay, so I going up. That's what had me in Dublin. I go to Dublin every Monday up to Airfield, up to Dundrum, and my eyes have been open. And I thought I was a real know-all, like, you know. But I thought I had a fair understanding of what happens in the production of food. I know nothing. I know nothing. Until when I've been talking to these lecturers, like we had a bee lecture. Oh my God, I didn't know whether to. I was amazed at the whole beauty of a bee for a start, but I also wanted to cry. Like, school children knew this. School children knew that or know that there are no wild honeybees. I didn't know that. They're gone. Any wild honey, any honeybees that you see out there now are what they call feral bees. So they belong to a beekeeper, but they've gone AWOL.
Jesus.
Yeah, kids are being taught this in school. I'm 50, and I didn't know that. You know, I didn't know about ivy honey. I knew there was lots of different types of honey, but I didn't know the bees made ivy honey. It's been made here in Gorey. You know, a beautiful one.
Is that Tara Hill honey?
Yeah.
Right.
Like, why did I not know that? I've been cooking for 40 years, and I didn't know what was under my what's under my nose. I also didn't know the absolute work that goes into something like honey making, and we all know that the bees are in trouble. But really, why are they in trouble? Really, why is it? Is it all to do with monoculture? Is it all to do with human intervention? Or is it to do with pests and insects? Or are they all related? Is it one thing or is it everything? There's lots of things. So we had a fantastic lecture from a guy who's opened a kind of a wildlife reserve up in Wicklow. It'll be open to the public now. I think they are actually open to the public. And he's just really, really interesting. He was really passionate. I've had a lecture from foresters. There's the people in Kilmuckridge, and they run the Irish, what do they call it? The Irish Wild Forest, or the Irish Forest Garden, I beg your pardon, Claire and Joe. And this place it's just amazing. So they do organic food boxes, so they grow them and they grow all this food, and you can order your food box. Claire will send you a message every week to say what she has, and then you go and buy it. But besides that, what they have is this edible forest. So they've allowed a space where it's not wilding. You know the way you've heard of wilding, where they leave a space? Yeah. It's more controlled than that. It's a little bit more controlled, but it is left. So it's based on the principles of Mary Reynolds, she's a famous Wexford garden designer, and she has she started this revolution. It's the only word I can think of it really, called the ARC. So the ARC stands for Acts of Regenerative Kindness. So you're basically letting the land do what it does, but you're giving it the landscape to do that. So it's like a 7-layer thing where they have like trees on the outside and then another layer of shrubs, then a bottom, right the way down until you make the ground possible for the mycelium to grow. And that's the communication back to bacteria, back to yeasts, back to microorganisms. And all of a sudden you get all these edibles, all these wild edibles, all sorts of things that we've kind of forgotten about. And you'll get the wildlife come back, and you'll get the pollinators. You'll get all of that back. And they have this wonderful little space where you can walk in and you can walk around and you can forage. Because you'd have your starter, main course and dessert in it, walking around it. And they've let a natural marhole build there. And now they have the birds and the frogs. They've all come back. And there was nothing there 5 years ago. There was nothing there. So all of this kind of thing has been brought home to me, I suppose, by study. I love studying, obviously, two degrees and a master's. I love studying, and I only want to, not that I only want to study, but it's the love of food. So I want to really understand what I'm doing. I want to respect every leaf of lettuce and every tomato, and understand the work that went into growing those. So that kind of what drives me. That's what I drive people mad talking about anyway.
It's fascinating. There's a PhD in you yet, and I think if you're going to go with a PhD, I think you'll end up going with the markets, and you might go and say, well, why? So there's the environmental factors that you've outlined, but it's people driven. All of this is people taking an interest in the past. Yeah. So is it that more people will come to your stall, more people will pop up in markets across the country, and this market will have more of a demand? Is that what you see?
Yeah, well, it's interesting you say about PhD, because I'm definitely trying for a PhD. I'm just waiting for someone to give me some money to do it, fund it. But actually it's in the culinary medicine area. So culinary medicine does tie in very well with this type of thing. But
sorry, what about culinary? How would you heal with culinary?
So culinary medicine is really about how medical professionals teach nutrition. Oh. So it's the chef's role in that is what I'm interested in. How chefs can add to this conversation. Because chefs are not just people who take something out of a packet, reheat it and Now there's plenty that just do that, and that's the way the thing has gone. But I think chefs have a huge amount to give to this conversation, to the biodiversity conversation, to the health conversation, to the I think they have a huge amount to add to it. And we're trained in that now. Chefs are not just trained in one thing anymore. There's a huge area around that. So that's what I believe. I believe that culinary medicine should be brought. Originally, it was mostly about training medical professionals to cook well so they can show or talk to patients about diet. I think it should be brought more into the community, which is bringing me to what you're saying about. So if you bring that to a community level, then you're going to get more people going to markets looking for that. But they may not come to a market. I don't really want people to still be coming to me in 5 years' time for kombucha. I would really like them to be coming maybe to me for flavour advice and for a Scoby, or for, you know, how can I make different types of whatever it is, that kind of way. So I'm not exactly going to set the world on fire with my kombucha. I'm not going to set up a big factory or anything like that. That's not the aim.
No, but you're
Education
starting a
is the aim
community.
for me.
You're willing to sell Scobies, like have you sold?
Oh, I
Scobies?
wouldn't sell a Scoby. I'd give a Scoby.
Oh, right, okay.
Oh,
okay.
Jesus, you go that would go against selling a Scoby. Would go against the whole thing of fermentation. No, you give your friendly bacteria to anybody who wants it, and you give them a sheet on how to do it.
Right.
And then you tell them to go ahead and don't forget to burp it. What I was saying to you, if you don't, we call it burping, because if it explodes in your kitchen, don't come back to me.
So simple steps would be to like go to a stall like yours or in a market somewhere. Is that what you say? Like for someone that wants to improve their own gut health, what would you say to them?
Yeah, I say definitely look out there. The markets are a good place to start, and there are some products in supermarkets and that. But look, if you're going to buy something like that, look in the chilled cabinets. Okay, you're not going to get anything that's fresh that's not chilled. Okay, so you know that's the first step. And try little bits of everything. That's really, you know, thing. So buy the kombuchas and that, but it might say on it contains raw live bacteria.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean it's not a pasteurised product. It could have been pasteurised, and then like some of our yogurts and things like that, where it's added back into it. But you see, sometimes this is a kind of a fight with me sometimes, because I'm a food safety trainer. You know, so I spend half my time telling people, this is how you kill bacteria, you know, this is how you make things safe. But I'm talking about pathogens there, bacteria that are going to cause illness. But then I tell people that we're too clean. You know, like we started off this conversation, we're too clean and we're too this and we're, you know. So there is a line there sometimes that I do find difficult in myself, that I have to try and figure out, like the commercial side against the home, making it at home and not making yourself ill. Because yes, you can, if you're not clean when you're bottling the kombucha, if you're not clean, like if those bottles are not sterilised, or you go to the toilet and you don't wash your hands and you come back and you start bottling something, then you're going to get, bad bacteria on that, you know, and then you could get sick from it. So there is a fine line, but I think workshops, I would love to find somewhere to do workshops, to do proper workshops, as in have like what I call a teaching kitchen. So there's a teaching kitchen where you could have 10 people, you know, and they're sharing a station, and they're making kimchi, or they're making sauerkraut. You were talking about sauerkraut earlier. I meant to say to you, a really good way to eat sauerkraut, if you don't like it, is to grate a pineapple. If you like the taste of pineapple or apple. Yeah. So I do a lot of that, and that's what add the grated that. So it helps people if they don't like that sour thing. So you get the sweetness of the pineapple. Yeah. And there's so much sugar in the pineapple, it actually increases the bacterial activity of your sauerkraut. Yeah. So little things like that. I'd love to do workshops on that. So I'd like to find a space that you can rent, and you can say, okay, I'm running a fermentation class, or I'm running a flavour cookery class. Nobody does that. I'd love to do that, you know. And yeah, so that's how I'd like to see it go. And the market is a great, I suppose it's just a great gateway to that. Yeah. Hopefully.
This is serious business, and one that we probably need to wake up to, I'd say.
Yeah, no. I think so. I think so. I think just even if people wake up to that diversity of foods, just that variety, if I could just get that through to people. But we're creatures of habit, aren't we?
Yeah, definitely.
What do, we buy the same brand of cornflakes or whatever it is. We buy the same things all the time. Now, that's not always our own fault, because when you go into, as good as some of the supermarkets are, and we all shop in supermarkets, basically, it looks like you've lots of choice, but actually you haven't. You've lots of different packaging, and you might have different brands, but you don't actually have much choice, you know. So and that's a problem. I think that's a problem, and that's where our guts are paying for it. There's more people with gut health problems and with immunity problems, you know, and it really is all stemming from, well, a lot of it is stemming from diet.
Right.
You know, we can help our immune system, we can protect it and scaffold it is what I'd like to go. We don't like the word we, who are we? But I don't like the word boost. You don't want your immune system boosted. That's not a good state of affairs to be in at all. But you do want to scaffold it. You want to, you know, encourage it and be kind to it. So diversity of foods, lots of fermented, not even lots of fermented food, but little bits of fermented food, lots of foods that that are not processed, basically, not ultra processed. It's a big problem.
Yeah.
Am I preaching now?
No. Help yourself.
Preach it to the converted. I hope that many Pepper Tuesdays convert to you now. So you're all on Instagram and Facebook, Boochandbia.
Boochandbia.
Yeah. And Theresa, you're fantastic. Do you know what? We've another one who's passionate, right? He's not normally just, I don't know. Let 34 seconds of this man speak to you anyway. It's flash flood, okay?
Flash flood?
Yeah. He's a contributor to the podcast. He's in a thunderstorm at the moment.
And I've seen a hat of a certain team, and the fucking hat cost €35. €35 for a fucking hat. Now, I never heard the likes of it before, but that's absolutely madness. I mean, €35 for a hat? I don't want to be selling cocaine with it or something. Outrageous stuff.
Would you pay €35 for a hat, Theresa?
Well, if it was going to last me 50 years, I might. It's made from sustainable materials. Irish wool.
Yeah, Flooded isn't happy anyway.
He's not happy, no.
No.
If you got cocaine with €35, I suppose, isn't a bad deal, like.
It's another example of the conglomerates of this world, though. Flood doesn't like conglomerates either. I'd say you join him in that club anyway.
I'm not sure I know what conglomerates means.
I'm not sure any of us do.
Except for it's hard to get my mouth around.
Theresa, thanks a million for coming into us. And
thanks a million for having me.
You're fantastic.
Oh, Jesus, thanks very much. I'm delighted to get the chance to talk about it, to be honest, because as you probably gathered, I like talking about food.
That was great.
It's great to listen to it. Get the chance. Thanks a million.
Thanks, Theresa.